On today's show, a big reason why the Cavs haven't been at their best lately, well, that's been the play of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. We'll talk about what those two need to do before the rest of the season, as well as what do we think we need to see from the Cavs before the regular season concludes. We'll talk about all that and so much more on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. And I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube right now, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up before we get started here. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode, of course, brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. The Cleveland Cavaliers have not played their best basketball in the month of March. That's no secret if you've watched them. That's no secret if you listen to this podcast every day. That's no secret if this is your first time listening to this podcast. Of course, they are coming off of a very nice win over, yes, one of the worst teams in the league in the Utah Jazz, but winning a game by 29 points after going on a 4-game losing streak, I do think is something that the team should be happy about, that fans should be happy about. So I think that they are, in a sense, moving in the right direction. They wrap up their 5-game West Coast trip tonight. If you are listening to this or watching this on Tuesday morning, they play Tuesday night in Portland against the Blazers in their 5th and final game of that trip. Donovan Mitchell not going to be playing in that game. Going to talk about what that can actually do, how that can be looked at as a positive for the Cavs coming up a little bit later on in the show. But a big part of the reason why the Cavs have not been at their best really throughout this entire month. And I know that 4-game losing streak is going to be the thing that catches all the headlines, right? Like you look at that and say, yeah, that is where the Cavs have bottomed out. But throughout the course of the month, the Cavs have not really played great basketball. They've had a couple of nice games in that stretch, but they had a week period where they beat Portland, they beat Miami, they beat Chicago, they beat Charlotte. And I thought, that actually might be the worst week of basketball the Cavs have played all year. And all of this does get back to Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, because throughout the course of the season, they have been 2 of the 3 best players on the Cavs. I think Donovan Mitchell has been the team's best player. I think Darius Garland at times has been the team's best player, but has probably been number 3 behind Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley. And those guys have been pretty consistent all year. They were both all-stars. They're both very deserving of being all-stars. I think Donovan is still going to be a first-team All-NBA guy. I think Darius has a chance to be an All-NBA guy. So that really speaks to how good they've been this season. But in the month of March, neither of them have played up to their standards, whether that standard is All-NBA level or All-Star level or just really good player level, whatever you want to pin it at. They've not played up to that. So in the month of March, Donovan Mitchell averaging 20.3 points per game, 5 boards, 5 assists on 33.3% shooting, 16.7% shooting from 3, and 83% from the line. You didn't need me to rattle off those stats to know that Donovan has not been playing well. And I do think that he's playing through something with that groin injury. He is missing tonight's game against Portland for injury management for his groin. So that is something to keep in mind, is maybe something that does explain this recent slide of his. In Darius Garland, his numbers in March, not great either. A little bit better, a little bit more efficient than Donovan, of course, on a little bit of a lower volume, but he's averaging 17.8, 6.5 assists and 4 rebounds on 39.3. So that's not terrible. It's not where you would expect Darius Garland to be. It's not where Darius Garland was earlier this year. 32.2, which for Darius Garland standards, I do think is pretty bad. I think he's somebody that should be around 42, 43% from 3. I think he's one of the best shooters in the league, and he's not been that this month. And then 94% from the free throw line, which is exactly where he should be. That's fine. So how do we see these guys turn around, because I do think for the Cavs to get back to being the Cavs on a full-time basis, and we saw them in the second half against Utah, they looked like the Cavs. So how do we see them get back to that? I think it starts with those guys getting downhill and getting to the rim a little bit more. And the way that Donovan played against Utah on Sunday really did stand out to me. And yeah, he went 0 of 5 from 3. And in a game where he only played, I believe, 21 minutes because the Cavs went on that run in the third quarter, he checked out the way that he normally does and never came back in, because, and Evan Mobley did the same thing. This wasn't an injury thing. It was the Cavs had such a big lead that they didn't need to play their starters anymore. But his box score numbers are not all that impressive. I think he was 5 of 13, but that is obviously very influenced by the fact that he was 0 of 5 from 3. And yeah, he missed 3 free throws, and he's not necessarily been great at the line lately. But on 2-point attempts, he was 5 of 8 in that game. And one of those twos came at the buzzer. I believe it was at the end of the first half. That was a tough shot. Like, he had to rush to get it off. That's not one that you look at and say, yeah, that should really hurt his percentage. Like, he deserved to miss that. No, like, that's just kind of an end of, it wasn't a heave because it was from 19 feet, but it's not the type of shot that you're used to seeing Donovan Mitchell take in the flow of an offense, if that makes sense. So you look at the other attempts that he took, essentially he was 5 of 7 on 2-pointers that were not, at the end of a quarter. And I think that's a really good sign for him. And the way that game started on Sunday, I thought was a big deal, that it was Donovan Mitchell going downhill, getting to the basket. That was the very first possession the Cavs had. Donovan Mitchell had a layup. And a lot of the stuff that he got going on was at the rim. And I think that's where Donovan needs to get better. Now, of course, that can be countered with, well, if his groin's bothering him, that is almost certainly taking away some of his explosiveness. And I do think that we have seen some explosive moments from Donovan Mitchell while dealing with this groin injury, but I don't know that he's necessarily always looked like the same guy. And I think the numbers very clearly do bear that out to be. But I think that getting downhill, getting to the rim is the answer to get him back going. And at some point, the 3-point shot's going to come back. He's not going to be a 20% 3-point shooter the rest of the year. He's not going to be that guy in the postseason. I feel very strongly about that. This is not who Donovan Mitchell is. Like, the huge sample size for Donovan says this is absolutely not who this guy is. He's either A, slumping, B, dealing with a bit of an injury, or C, some mix of both. And we don't know what percent is what, but I think it very clearly is some sort of mixture of that. And then for Darius Garland, I think it's similar. I don't know if it's getting all the way to the rim, because he's obviously not the same level of explosive finisher at the basket that Donovan is. That said, I think Darius is a very creative finisher at the rim, probably more creative than Donovan. But and Darius has been, to his credit, I think better the last few games. Now, he was 2 of 8 from 3 against Utah. Like, it wasn't a great game, but I do think that he has played recently better than Donovan Mitchell has. He's certainly been more efficient, even if the volume, as I said earlier, not quite at the same level. For Darius, I think when he's got it going on, he's able to get into that mid-paint area, and he's able to really hurt opponents with that floater. And the floater is a bit of a tricky shot. He and Ty Jerome and Donovan Mitchell to an extent too. I think when Donovan has it going on, you see that like over the head gather almost into a floater while he's falling away from the basket, which is a really tough shot to hit. But that's kind of like the one thing that he's got in his bag that you look at and say, yeah, when that's there, he's really tough to stop, and he's feeling really good about himself. We've not seen that a ton lately from him. But I think for Darius, it's getting to that floater range where he's been before this hip injury that really started the slump for him at the end of February. That had been an area where he just absolutely crushed teams. He was shooting around 60% on floaters before then, and that's well above what league average is in that area. So I do think that is one of the things that when that comes back for Darius, and I think it's looked better lately, but that's when you're going to see him get back to being Darius Garland. And of course, he's missed some time lately. He didn't play in that game against, I believe it was Sacramento last Wednesday, for rest purposes. He's playing against Portland on Tuesday. I think Tuesday is a really big opportunity for him. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But overall, I think as those guys hopefully get healthier for the Cavs, like, that is something that they do need, because this team, I don't necessarily think it's fair to say they're only going to go as far as the guards take them, because that's just not true. And that doesn't give enough credit to Evan Mobley for who he's become on both ends of the floor. But I do think that for this team to win a championship, which, listen, losing 4 games in March does not mean that you're not a championship contending team. But I do think that for this team to get to those championship aspirations that they have, they need better guard play than they've gotten. This isn't some hot take, but for the team to work the way that it's built, where they've got 2 all-star, all-NBA caliber guards, they've got 2 great bigs, one of which is going to be an all-NBA player, I think, in Evan Mobley. And you're a little thin in the middle. I know DeAndre Hunter obviously did change that a little bit, but you're a little thin in the middle. You need stellar backcourt play in the playoffs to get by. And right now, what the Cavs have gotten has not been good enough. Now, luckily, they have more than enough time to get this turned around. So what do we need to see? Not just from Donovan and Darius the rest of the way, but what do we need to see from the Cavs in their final regular season games that they still have left? Let's talk about that next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go, man? I mean, between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it can be easy to lose track of your finances. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. They'll be your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending right in one place. So you can stop managing your money and start building your wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, even plan for those long-term goals that I know you have. And managing money with your partner smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress that you might think comes along with it. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. If you're listening to the show wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else, make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you drop a 5-star rating, leave a nice review, and be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Tell a friend that's a Cavs fan, hey, you should be listening to Locked On Cavs every day like I do. And also make sure you sign up for the Locked On Cavs daily newsletter. It is your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. You can sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That is lockedondaily.com. So the Cavs have several games left this year. I don't necessarily think that there's a game that I look at and say, yeah, that'll be a really nice test for them in their final 11 games beginning tonight. There's not a Boston left. There's not an OKC left. There's not a Milwaukee left. Like, they have 2 games against the Pacers, and the Pacers are a really good team. I think they've been playing great basketball, but those are 2 of the final 3 games of the regular season. And I just don't think that the outcome of those games matters all that much. They have 2 games against the Knicks left, one of which you could talk me into that game on April 2nd saying, yeah, this one matters because the Cavs are going to have 2 days off before it. The Knicks are on the second night of back-to-back. The Cavs have this year owned New York. They won a game by 40 against them. They won another game at MSG against them. Maybe you could talk me into that game mattering, like that being a spot for the Cavs to look good in. I believe that's also an ESPN nationally televised game. So maybe you could talk me into that one. But even then, it's just like nothing that we see from this team is going to change our opinion on whether or not they are championship contenders. Like, they are, and that's the end of that story. They will be a team that I believe is going to be playing in the conference finals and have an opportunity to win a title. But what do we need to see to reinforce that in these final 11 games? And the thing that I immediately go to is a lot of what I talked about in that first segment, and it's the guard play. And it's not just that both Darius and Donovan have been playing less than their best basketball lately. I think it's also that, when is the last time that we saw both of those guys have a really good game the same night? It's been a little while. Like, it has been a little while, to the fact that this is kind of something that maybe you could look at as concerning. I think the last time they both played a good game the same night could be that first game coming back from the All-Star break, where they played in Brooklyn against the Nets. Obviously, everybody was well rested as they didn't play for over a week. And yes, both guys were at All-Star festivities during that week off. But I think that that's kind of the last time you look at. And yes, part of it is they've both missed time. Darius missed time with that hip. Donovan's been out with the groin injury here and there, and they both sat for resting purposes too. But in that game, that was February 20th against the Brooklyn Nets. First game back from the All-Star break. In that game, Darius Garland played 28 minutes, was 6 of 12, so 50%, 2 of 6 on 3, which is fine, not necessarily great. He finished with 18 points, 9 assists, had 2 turnovers. Like, that's not his best game, but that is a good game. Donovan Mitchell in that game, 8 of 21, finished with 26 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. Like, that's fine. That's a good game. It's not a great game by either of them, but it's a good enough game. We've not seen enough of that lately. They've each individually, I think, had good games since then. You look at what Darius did in the game against Brooklyn that the Cavs won, and he went off in the fourth quarter. Guess who didn't play in that game? Donovan Mitchell did not play in that game. But and Donovan has had maybe fewer good games lately than Darius has had, like against Sacramento. Do you want to say he had a good game? I think you can make that case. 8 of 17, didn't shoot the ball well, but finished with 26 points, 5 and 4. Darius Garland didn't play in that game. This is not something that these two can't coexist, because I think that they've done more than enough to prove over not just this season, but if you also go back and look at the first year that they played together, that they can work really well together. I think this speaks to more of the fact that they're not being consistently great basketball players right now. Like, that is the thing that I just think that if we see the Cavs have 2 or 3 games of these final 11 where both Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell score more than 20 and are efficient in doing so and shoot the ball well from 3, I think that's a reason to feel better about this team. And they've got time. 11 games is a very long time in the NBA. And I even think, too, that if you want to go there, you can say, I'm willing to even see that through the first round of the playoffs, because no matter who the Cavs play in the first round, whoever is the 8 seed, like, that is a series that they should not have problems with. Like, if they have issues with that, there are far bigger issues than what's going on with the guard play. The other thing that sticks out to me is the defense. So from February 10th, and as you know, if you listen to this show, I've been tracking what do the Cavs look like defensively, like where do they rate in the NBA from February 10th. And why do I bring up February 10th over and over again? Well, I do that because that was the first day that DeAndre Hunter played a game for the Cleveland Cavaliers. That date is something that matters to me. They had routinely been near the top of the league in that category, in the defense category. And despite the fact that they've not played great defense lately, they still are 4th there. But they've slipped a little bit, where they were the best defense at one point from February 10th on. Now they're down in 4th. Their defensive rating is 110.7. That's 3rd in the Eastern Conference. I don't know that that is necessarily good enough. I said when they made the trade, they need to be top 5 in offense. From that point, they need to be top 5 in defense. They are 2nd in offense. They're 4th in defense. So that's really good. But I do think that at times, and maybe this is just hey, it's March basketball. They're in a bit of a malaise. It's not a big deal. And that could be true. But I do think that seeing them ramp back up defensively could be a really good thing. And yes, they're coming off of a very good defensive game against the Utah Jazz. Now, is that anything to write home about? No, because Utah is a terrible basketball team. But I do think that seeing them build on that defensive performance and what they look like tonight against Portland is going to matter. What do they look like against the Spurs, who have been a pretty good offense as of late? What do they look like against the Detroit Pistons, who have been a really good team on both ends of the floor as of late? Both those teams are in the top 10 in offense since that February 10th date. So can they ramp the defense up and be one of the best defenses in the league from here on out? I think they can. They're more than capable of it. But is that something that we're going to see? And then, of course, the other thing is get back to hitting threes. For the season, the Cavs are still the number 1 team in 3-point shooting percentage. They're shooting just under 39% from 3, which is really good. in this stretch, the Cavs are not shooting the ball all that well. They are dead last in 3-point percentage over the last 5 games. That is not who we expect the Cavs to be. I have no reason to believe they're going to continue to be that, but I do think that seeing them have some good shooting games between now and the end of the regular season on April 13th would be something that would reassure a lot of people about this team, that the offense is for real. Again, other than this little blip here, I don't think there's a reason to doubt that. And I do think that a lot of this can be explained away by the fact that this is a team that looks very tired. They look like they have heavy legs a lot of the time they're out there. So I do think that you can explain that away, but I also understand if you're doubting a little bit, are they really as good of a shooting team as they showed to be earlier in the season? And then lastly, stay healthy. Donovan is very obviously dealing with that groin thing as he misses tonight's game. Darius Garland has been beat up at times this year. Jarrett Allen, although I don't think he had a wrap on his hand on Sunday, which is the first time in a while he has not done that, which can only be taken as a good sign. And listen, there's not an NBA player that plays a lot of minutes in the NBA at this point in the season that feels 100% healthy. And I do think that when the Cavs get there, so they play April 13th at home against the Indiana Pacers in the last game of the season. When they get there, they will play that game. I don't know who's going to play in that game for them. The 1 seed will be taken care of by then. They will probably be locked into the second best record in basketball behind OKC. And then they will have a week off before they play again. I would bet a lot of money that their first playoff game is going to be April 20th because that's how the seeding stuff works with the 1 seed. The 1 seed almost always plays on Sunday. So they have a week off to get right and get ready. And I think that'll be a really big deal for them physically. I think that'll be a really big deal for them mentally as well. And I just think getting to that point with everything in order, as healthy as this team can possibly be, really is what is going to matter most between now and the end of the regular season. Now, we talked a little bit about Donovan Mitchell's groin injury that's keeping him out tonight against Portland. I do think this provides a really big opportunity for Darius Garland. We're going to talk about that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. If you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Donovan Mitchell not going to play against the Portland Trailblazers. He is listed as out on the NBA's injury report with left groin injury management for what it's worth. Jalen Tyson is also out of this game, and all 3 two-way guys are going to be inactive for the Cavs as well. So Donovan being out is, one, I think a good thing that the Cavs are prioritizing his health, that it's going to be, hey, this result does not necessarily matter. The wins and losses at this point are not entirely inconsequential, but I think they are largely inconsequential. So Donovan's primary goal should be to be healthy at the end of the season, should be to be healthy going into the postseason. He has reached the 65-game mark for games played, which matters for the All-NBA consideration. I think he will get MVP votes as well. He's not going to win the MVP award, but I do think he'll get votes. I would suspect he's going to finish first team All-NBA. Maybe he slides to second team, but I would suspect that he finishes as a first team All-NBA guy for the first time in his career. And I thought he should have been the first year he was in Cleveland, but I think this year he will be. So tonight, I think this is a really big opportunity for Darius Garland to get going and find his own rhythm. And it's, again, nothing about those guys coexisting or not coexisting. I think they've done a great job of that. I don't think there should be questions about that. But I do think having a game where Garland can focus on maybe getting his own a little bit more than he can in other opportunities could be a really good thing. Because I do think that, again, for the Cavs to get to where they want to go, Darius Garland needs to be really, really good. And he's shown he's more than capable of being that guy. And having this chance to go out and have an efficient, good game where he can score, he can look for his own, he can set up teammates, maybe even play some extended minutes in this game. And the rotations, of course, are going to look differently without Donovan Mitchell in them. So that is something that I think can be a really big opportunity. And of course, I think that this, as well as any time one of those guards misses time is another big opportunity for Evan Mobley. And I do think that other than that game against the Clippers, where, Zubac just absolutely dominated the paint, which was not a good sign for the Cavs. Other than that, it's hard for me to sit here and say that Evan hasn't been really good. I know he was only 4 of 10 against the Jazz. Again, he only played 21 minutes. I thought he was good in that game. I thought he was pretty good against Phoenix. I thought he was great against Sacramento. I thought he was good against Memphis. Obviously, he didn't play against Orlando, and I think that's a big reason why they lost. He was really good against Brooklyn. Like, Evan Mobley's playing some of the best basketball, particularly on the offensive end of his career lately. He's been fantastic on that end of the floor. And this game without Donovan Mitchell is another big opportunity for both him and Darius Garland. And Evan probably doesn't need that opportunity at this point. It'll be nice potentially to see him just like keep it going, if that makes sense. But I do think that to get Darius going and to get Darius back in rhythm, back on track as a really good offensive player, this could be a good opportunity for him. And anytime there's an opportunity to rest Donovan Mitchell, and this will serve as essentially 3 days off for him, because maybe you could make the case 3.5 days because they played Utah at 1:30 Mountain Time on Sunday, and then he won't play again until 7 o'clock Eastern Time on Thursday. That is a pretty significant rest period. So maybe it's not only an opportunity for Darius on Tuesday night, but it's an opportunity for Donovan on Thursday night to look refreshed and rejuvenated when the Cavs get back home and take on the Spurs. Like, that is something that could matter too. And, we'll see who plays both ends of that back-to-back coming up. They're at home against San Antonio on Thursday. They're in Detroit on Friday. So that could be something to watch as well. But thank you for watching this right here on YouTube. If you are watching, before we get out of here, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. And if you are listening to this in podcast form, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me, or give it 5 stars, whatever your rating system is on the podcast engine of your choosing. We'll say some nice words about it and subscribe, and tell a friend to subscribe as well. But I will be back tomorrow talking about whatever the Cavs do against the Portland Trail Blazers.